goes. I'm mainly going to try and screen share so that we can look at stuff together. So where should we go first? Let's see if I can share. Oh, so I am recording, then I have to oh no, is it that one? I have to share screen. Let's see how that works. My entire screen share. Okay, so now if I go to Moodle, let's see what happens. So we were actually in 2 weeks this week. We were in Unit 3, the communication unit, week 18, inclusive practices, and that was 2 orange theory questions, and we'll look at how you can answer those. But they also link to you in practice working with children who have barriers to learning. So we looked in college on Friday, we also looked at how you could get the blue demonstrate criteria. So I'll show you both of those things now. So Libby and Katie, can you see Moodle at the moment?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, it's good when it works. So the 2 questions are DPR, that's Unit 3, 7.1, explain what is meant by inclusion and inclusive practices. And 7.2, identify barriers to children and young people's participation. Well, basically, the identify one defines what is meant by inclusion. What is meant by inclusion is identifying barriers.
Yeah.
Instead of saying there's something wrong with that child and we're not sure if they can stay in our normal school, that's the old-fashioned way of thinking. We nowadays like to think we've got all these different children with different needs in our class. Will any of them have a barrier to learning tomorrow's lesson? Let's plan so we can remove that barrier and make the lesson accessible for everyone. So we're not separating 7.1 and 7.2. They just go at the top of your essay. And when you've finished writing, you'll have answered both of them. Okay. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
You can't nod at the moment because I'm not looking at your faces. I'm looking at Moodle. So
okay, we'll make noise.
Yeah, if you could grunt or nod or, I mean, speak rather than nodding, that would be great. I thought maybe my computer had frozen then. So if you're looking at my screen with me, one of the things we looked at that was really useful is this social versus medical model of disability. So I'm going to click on that, and in fact I already opened it. Here's one I opened earlier. This is from Penny Tassoni preschool childcare book, and it really clearly sets out the old-fashioned, out-of-date medical model, and then it explains the up-to-date social model of disability, which is the inclusion model. So you could use this article for quoting in your introduction, I think, and it goes through describing the medical model, which is a kind of the focus of the problem is in the child. Like I just said, there's something wrong with the child. It says here, children and their families are seen as helpless and thus in need of sympathy and charity.
Wow.
So,
outrageous.
Yeah. And in the social model, that should be about empowering children and their families, asking their points of view and taking their needs into consideration. And we should be planning in advance rather than going, oh dear, how's Fred going to join in using his wheelchair? I didn't think of that. Everything should be done seamlessly. So that's the 2 models of inclusion. Oh, and I should say that last week we were all talking about all different groups of children, Black children, gay children, the difference between boys and girls in schools. Today, what we're really focusing on is children with special needs and disabilities.
Yeah.
So have a read through that article and see if you could use that in your introduction.
Mm-hmm.
And then where shall I go now? Let's go back to Moodle again. Oh yes, then we watched this video, and I would really suggest.
I did watch this.
You've watched it, okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Because in this video, it really clearly sets out a good model of how to do inclusion. It's called Making Inclusion Work. It was quite funny in the lesson because everybody got quite critical of the video, which was good. They were going, oh, I don't know if that head teacher is using the really correct terminology. He's talking about disabled children as them and other. I think that was Sarah. She was very critical of.
Yeah.
Actually, what we were trying to do was, from the video, pick out what barriers there could be to inclusion and how to remove those barriers. And I just think I haven't got it written down for you to see, but maybe you could make a note, or maybe you've got it already. The 3 barriers that we're looking at in terms of good inclusion is removing physical barriers. So in the video, you might have seen that for the boy using a wheelchair, there were automatic doors, there were ramps, and they'd put in a disabled toilet, and I think that we saw somewhere a physio room for him to have physiotherapy. And obviously it's not just for him. There are probably other children in the school that will benefit by there being ramps and automatic doors. Maybe the girl who's partially sighted will find it easier to negotiate ramps than stairs. So physical barriers. There are also things like braille machines and special keyboard for the children to use. I would have to say this video is from 2005, we noticed, and quite a lot of the technology looked very out of date.
Yeah.
It's amazing how things kind of, how quickly things move on, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm sure there's even more technology now available for children with special needs that can really help them with their being able to communicate, being able to read and write. So yeah, so that's our first barrier, is the physical one. The second barrier is about funding and staff training. So I'm telling you it all. I could ask you, as you've both watched the video, what did you see in the video that was good practice in terms of staff training or funding?
Oh, I can't. Now I'm like, I can't remember the video so much.
Weren't they training the one-to-one with the blind girl?
Oh yeah.
That's right. So there was a TA who was
Braille.
getting trained in Braille.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other support or training that the school was getting?
Off the top of my head, no.
I can't. Yeah, I don't think I was thinking about funding and really when I was watching it.
Okay, well, that's fine. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? So if you'd watched it in college, before you watched the video, I would have flagged up what I wanted you to look for, and then I'm focusing you. So that makes me feel good that I actually have some purpose as a tutor in focusing your watching skills. So what else was there in there? For the boy who used the wheelchair, I think the special school had given them lots of support with how to support him. I remember the head teacher made a comment of it's difficult to know when he can't do something because he actually can't do it, and when he's just being willful and a bit naughty. We often don't think that children with special needs can just be willful or naughty. So that was quite good that the special school that he'd come from were supporting the school and helping them to know what his abilities were. What else? Oh, the local authority tried to make sure that all 3 children, and I think they said there were 10 in that school with now they said a statement, but now it would be a education, health and care plan. That they were all cost negative to the school. It wasn't costing the school anything. Although the boy who used the wheelchair, the head did say they couldn't afford to have 2 members of staff waiting around all day long in case he needed a wee. So they had to, if he did need to go to the loo and they needed 2 staff, they'd have to get someone to come out of another lesson for 10 minutes. And
didn't they also use sort of like voluntary?
Yeah, I think so.
Members as well.
Yeah. And then the third barrier that there could be in a school to children being able to join in is known as attitudinal, or the attitudes of the other people working in the school. So the head teacher, we felt, apart from some of his use of language, had a very positive attitude, a kind of, oh, it's a challenge, never done this before, but we'll try and make it work. What did you notice? Any other attitudes that you felt were positive?
The teacher, there was a teacher. Was it the teacher with the blind girl?
Go on, what? Because it probably applies to all of them.
Yeah, I think because I watched it the week before last, I think this is making me realise I need to watch it again and refresh it. But I'm sure one of the teachers was saying how they were trying to take each day as it come, kind of thing, and they were having to be flexible and change to meet the challenges that they were coming across, rather than just keep hitting, like doing something they weren't getting anywhere with.
And also they did have an expectation that things might fail or things might go wrong, and they weren't going, oh well, that didn't work, so this child really can't be in mainstream. They were going, well, that didn't work, so tomorrow we'll try something different. Trial and error, I think.
It was also sort of like, wasn't she saying that it was almost like a bit of messy learning? It was that how they were trying to
said that.
Yeah.
So the staff attitudes were positive. They saw the children.
Oh, Sarah, you went really quiet, but you're back again now.
Okay, good. So the staff were positive. They saw children with special needs as a challenge, not as a problem, and they were willing to admit they might fail and have another go at adapting things for those children.
Yeah,
I'm guessing like negative barriers to do with attitudes and things would be just not seeing things as challenging, just seeing it as poor behaviour, or so going back again to the medical model, the problems with the child and the family, and if anything goes wrong they need to go to a special school, we can't cope with them here. Okay, and then so you can, in your essay, you can use examples from the video, or if you've got examples from your own school where you've been working, you could use those examples, or if you've got examples as a parent or a family that you know with a special needs child, you could use those examples. I think I didn't download the board notes. Let me find the board notes. I was just thinking, I think when my dad was a teacher, I can really remember, I think it was much more the old school way, because I can remember conversations where it's like, oh, they need to be in a school that's, I don't know, I can remember it being quite like they're not supposed to be in a mainstream school, the school can't and stuff. But I mean, I don't know whether they had the same funding to help with stuff then anyway.
No, and it's a government policy now that as many children as are able, if their parents want them to, they should be in mainstream. Not that they've necessarily fully funded that, but the government policy is in that direction.
So I'm going to try really, really hard to stick to 2 pages. Right.
Well, you know, to answer the question well and see how many pages it comes to. So now I'm just on, there was an essay outline So if you look through the board notes, there's lots of ideas to help you. Oh, here we go. Can you see this? Is it big enough to see? Just scroll in a bit. So really nice essay outline done by a student last year. So introduction with a definition of inclusion. And she's gone, look, not the medical model, that gets a cross. Social model gets a tick. And then you could have 3 paragraphs where you talk about 3 different barriers: physical, organizational, and attitudinal, which she didn't spell correctly in either of those attempts, but never mind. And she's saying down the side here, PEE, don't forget to P in your answers. You could mention the 3 different children, visually impaired, the boy who had cerebral palsy using the wheelchair, and the little boy we haven't mentioned with Soto syndrome as your examples. Or you could just pick one child and base it all on one of them. And then in conclusion, you can put in your own opinions. Do you think mainstream is right for all, or are there some children that would be better in a special school? As a parent, there's parents in the video. I think it's Anna, the visually impaired girl. They really wanted her to be in mainstream. And then this student has include a quote to prove to Sarah that you have read a bit more than just the smartboard notes. And if you wanted to put in an educational theorist to get an A star, you could mention Bandura or Merton. So adults being role models, or the self-fulfilling prophecy. Or that's a good one to mention. If the attitudinal barrier, we should have high expectations of all students. We shouldn't be saying, oh, he's got cerebral palsy, he won't really get this, we'll just give him a colouring sheet.
What was everyone's, so in the conclusion, just out of interest, was there a conversation about mainstream for all?
Yes.
What was the, I'm just interested to hear what other people's thoughts and feelings might have been on it.
It's like, I think in the video, the blind child's mum had also been made to go to a special school. Okay. So she was quite adamant that she didn't want her daughter going to one.
Yeah.
And then there was also some people whose children had gone to a mainstream school, but yet hadn't really integrated as well.
Okay.
But when they'd changed them to going to a special school, they'd managed to integrate and make friends because they weren't needing to try so hard to be like everybody else in the mainstream school, because they just felt that they didn't fit.
Yeah, so I suppose like on an individual basis,
yeah. I definitely think that parents, and if the children are old enough to take part, they should have a choice.
Yeah.
Do you feel that your child would be better in mainstream, or having started off in mainstream, do you think maybe a special school would meet their needs better?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm writing notes while you guys are talking.
I presume it is that whole, you know, as the video showed, it's that trial and error. For some people, you know, they may want their children to go, but then they may realise the harm that it's having. So therefore they'll change and realise that actually it's worked on a better scale. Whereas other people may find that actually, no, it works for their children being integrated in mainstream.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it is that whole, as any parent, you trial and error things to see what works, or how to get your children to deal with different things in general, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things we said, and the reason why there's a Maria Montessori video at the bottom of the Moodle page, is because schools are just not really set up to include all children. We've got 30 children in a class, so how can someone in a wheelchair get round? We've got 30 children in a class, so how does a child with autism and sensory overload cope in that sort of loud environment? We've got the whole league tables and year 6 SATs that's putting on pressure on teachers to make the children achieve. That doesn't help to be inclusive. So, you know, we might need to redesign the whole of education. And I'm suggesting let's go for Montessori schools that are much more child-centered, smaller classes, age groups mixed together. So you might have an 8-year-old working with a 4-year-old, and that would make inclusion easier.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was a bit of Sarah Jordan opinion at the end.
But then it also, Sarah, it also comes to that point of, when do expectations stop being sort of like an inclusion point, or the fact that you can get to it to being a pressure point for a child?
Yeah.
Because we can have these expectations, but some children just see them as daunting. Oh my God, that's where I've got to be, and I'm nowhere near that. And almost see it as a bit of a, well, do you want me to be there? It's unobtainable, so therefore I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, good point. We did discuss that in the lesson as well. Do the other mainstream normal children, do they act as a role model for the children with special needs, and they progress faster because they can see what to aspire to? I want to be able to walk or sit up like the other kids can, and that pushes them on. Or like you've said, do they see it as something unobtainable, and it makes it even harder for them?
Makes them feel even more different, kind of thing. Yeah.
So you can put any of those ideas in your conclusion.
Okay.
So Libby, how do you feel about that essay now? Does that feel tackleable?
Yeah. Hang on, I'm just writing a note on what you guys just said.
We are recording it, so hopefully you could go and look at this recording and replay what we're saying.
Yeah, no, that does feel doable. What I was wondering, I suppose, as well, was there much in the lesson about
another thing?
Oh, sorry. About the SEN group thing that we have to start doing?
Yeah, there was. But before we get to that, can I just show you one more idea? And this is the crossover. This is a good segue from one to the other. So this worksheet is just under the other. If you scroll down a little bit on Moodle, this is about using inclusive practices. And it is for a blue demonstrate criteria, DPR 7.3. And you can look at this. You don't need to hand this one in to me, but it gives you a whole load of ideas for what is good inclusive practice. So if you want to say good inclusive practice is removing barriers, you could then look at this and go, for example, are tasks explained and modelled clearly? Are you using, I like the next one actually, visual and tangible aids. So have you got real objects, puppets? Do you use signing and symbols when you're talking to the children? And if you're being much more visual in your presentation, that's going to help children who have English as an additional language. It's going to help other children in the class. So anything that you can do that supports special needs children will have a positive benefit, I think, for other children in the class. So you can have a look.
You know that sheet that you
Am I still screen sharing here? I think I stopped screen sharing. So I'm talking about a worksheet that you can't even see. So this one, did I just show you this or not?
Oh, no, I'm seeing it now though.
Okay, good. Katie, what did you want to say?
So if we've got some diary entries that cover that, can we sort of like use that as a evidence thing?
Yes, you can. So
say if you participated in a lesson and you've put for differential learning, we've been able to provide in, we've used puppets or props or signs and symbols to make sure that all children over certain spectrums are covered. Making sure that we use the different strategies for the EAL children and other SEN children within the class.
Yeah. So
if that's in a diary entry of a lesson, can I use that for that practical, like if I kind of put the practical by it?
Yeah, definitely. So let me just explain that. So this worksheet here, you can use this for two reasons. One, you can put it as examples in the essay that you've done, Katie, and that Libby's about to do. And secondly, you can use these ideas for writing diary entries, or you just to measure and go, oh yeah, I've done that, I've got that in a diary entry. Or for your practical ones, we have this SEND study. Now, before the arrival of Corona, this would have been a big part of your practical evidence this year. But me and Dorian have discussed this, and we've decided to make it as low key as possible. So rather than working with a SEND child one-to-one and making it into a big study, we're just saying, if you work with a group of children, which I'm guessing most people will have done already and will be doing now in September, who have any sort of special needs, they could be the blue group who struggle with reading or writing, or maybe there is a child with a named special need, then you could use this study not as a long-term thing, but if you just work with a group of children 1 week and you work with them again next week, you could see how many of these criteria can you fill in by just talking about 1 or 2 activities.
Hang on, let me just get my head around this. I think I'm getting this is something I'm getting nervous about, starting to actually to work with the kids. I've been doing, they've mainly been wanting me to kind of play with them since they've been back and do, they've just started getting me to do some of the other bits again. But we may only need to do this a couple of times with a group. Or not. You don't need to specially go and do this. It's more like when they ask you to work with a group of children, if you write down what you've done, if you have a look at this now, and we'll just have a quick look through it, then you might think, oh, when I was working with that group today, I did a couple of things off the SEND study. I'll just go and note those down, and hopefully by December you'll have done 2 or 3 different things with children that you had to adapt an activity for in any way, and then you can put it on this sheet and tick it off.
But, Libby, it is something. So say if you're doing a maths game and they've got they've got a coloured line in front of them, but yet they can't grasp it. It's as simple as just getting a couple of bricks for one of them.
Okay, yeah. Just
so although it's only a small thing that you wouldn't normally think about, when you come to writing it down on the SEND study, it is one of those things that you'll find that, oh, actually I've done that.
Okay.
So try not to get yourself worked up, because it is something that you do every time that you're kind of working with the kids anyway.
Yeah, don't make it bigger than it is. I think sometimes when you get nervous and you look at it, you're like, whoa.
Totally. Totally.
And what I was going to say, Katie was saying, well, I've done something like this already. Can I just write it on a bit of paper? Yes, absolutely. If you find this worksheet useful, so in my head, I always like to try and lump as many criteria together in one place and make you do a couple of things with a child, and then that'll tick off. I think this has got about 10, maybe 15 criteria on it. That is supposed to make it easier. It's not meant to make you think, oh, I can't do all of these. It's meant to make you think, oh, I worked with a child. I took a little. So when you're doing your playing with the kids, Libby, this could cover this totally.
Okay, yeah, because I have been doing things to help with children that have got are finding things tricky. Yeah, exactly. So even in the play.
Yeah, I played with that little boy the other day, and I was obviously you're trying to make it a bit educational and linking to what the teacher's trying to do in their literacy and numeracy. And if you read through this, you could see it's got a planning section, a delivering section, and then an evaluating section. So after you've done a game or a little fun activity with a child, you could then afterwards think, did that actually help them?
Okay.
Or did,
Go on.
Like, because we've got to start doing the group stuff to get, like, they want the group, oh my God, sorry, stuttering around, to do like group things now, where you take a group. That's what they're going to sort out for me for next week. Should I try and maybe get them to maybe incorporate children with SEN within that group? Would that help me do this, do you think?
It would help you do this, but also, so there's two different things. The two main things that you need to think about now is this one about adapting activities for children with special needs. And the other one is to plan a fun activity to do when Charlotte comes out to observe you.
Okay.
And if you're going to tick off lots of things when Charlotte comes, it might not be, but might be easier if you just picked the 4 nicest, chattiest children in the class.
Okay. Yeah.
But it could be that one of the SEND children is very chatty and will be able to talk about what they're doing. And then when they come to write something, that's when they would struggle. That might be a really good child to have when Charlotte comes to tick off lots of criteria.
Okay, cool.
The plan is over the next 3 or 4 weeks up to half term that we talk a lot about supporting reading, writing and maths, and then we're going to plan a super duper activity for after half term when Charlotte comes to visit you.
Yeah.
And then probably after you've had Charlotte, then you could come back to this SEND sheet and think, oh yeah, I've done something. In September, I was doing little activities with one-to-one or little groups of children that could cover this.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of flagging this SEND thing up now as something to think about, really not anything to do.
Just kind of diary entries, like you were saying, Katie, just kind of keep your mind fresh and
So pretty much.
Yeah. What kind of notes do you make when you're doing your diary entries? Like, do you write what happened, how you handled it, do you have like a outline?
Well, basically, I've got a notebook that I take to school with me.
Yeah.
Which, well, basically, my diary entry book, at the back I use notes, so therefore I put the date and I'll say what we've been doing. So if we're doing CVC, or if we're doing maths, or if I've joined in on both, and then whether or not I've worked with a small group, or whether or not I've floated around the whole class. And then what I try and do is at the end of once all the kids have gone, I take just sort of like 5 minutes and go through the teacher about what I've done, and then I try and marry it up to, so I make general notes about what I've done, how I got the kids to, because like without me knowing it, I was doing things of AFL, but yet I didn't realise that they were AFL.
Yeah.
So I was automatically doing it, and I found it really hard to try and state what I was doing. Whereas going back to my diary, I've actually it's actually helping me write the AFL kind of essay, because then it puts in sort of like pointed bits how I've covered the AFL.
Yeah.
So making them read back, or making them say back their walk to me, getting them to acknowledge that they've missed out on the finger spaces or things like this. So doing it that way, and then I'd go home and as I'm writing it up, I'm seeing what criteria I can match it to.
Yeah.
And then 9 times out of 10, I'd take it to Sarah. Whereas this time I haven't. It's just going to be a photocopy upload, and hope that I can get away with it that way. What are we doing with our diaries this year? Because obviously last year we just photocopied them and added them into our file. If we're doing an online file, then it's a little bit harder.
The same way, you could photocopy it or take a photo of your diary if you feel it meets the criteria, and email it to me, and I'll tell you if I agree that it's met it. Or maybe there might be more input from Charlotte this year. When she's been and visited you in school, then she'll do some team sessions like this with you and help you to collect your other evidence.
Oh, I didn't realise we needed to like use the diary entries for anything other than going back to for ourselves, but we need to use them for other things, do we?
Well, so what
Only
you can do with
sometimes.
them, you can just totally use them to jog your memory. And then when I say you need some evidence for this, you can look at your diary little scribbly entry,
And write it.
jog your memory and write it up so it meets the criteria.
Okay.
Libby, let me show you one. I'm going to share my screen again. Let me show you one on Moodle. So if you go to oh, here I'm on it already. Unit 7 on Moodle, the SEND study. Let me go back and show you. So it's week 15, SEND child study in Unit 7. There's the SEND study worksheet we were just looking at. There's a sample one all filled in. Don't let that one freak you out because it's got loads of detail and we're scaling it down. The good thing about that one is you could pick out little bits from it and go, oh, I've done something like that.
Yeah.
But this is I've called it excellent diary entry with photos. Somebody did this one last year. Let me click on that now. Diary entry. Can you see what I'm looking at?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. And I like this. Look, it's not very long, and it's quite scribbly. And she did it on coloured sugar paper and stuck little photos in. But I really liked it because it started. JD didn't have a very good week. That's the child she was working with one-to-one. So my planned activity didn't go well. He didn't show any interest in practicing maths with a bean string. So everything she'd planned didn't work. He wasn't in a good mood. And then she said what she tried to do instead. And because she tried to adapt things to get him interested, that was really good evidence. So nothing has to go well. Things can all go wrong and the child can not be interested and you can try something different. And then she found something that he was interested in and she wrote really good evidence.
Cool. Okay.
So there's loads of stuff on Moodle to help you to know what you're doing.
Cool.
Okay, I feel like I should stop recording now because I'm sure that's enough for people to have a look at.
Thanks.
So I'm going to stop recording and then